So, welcome to another episode of the Vibrant Mind, Vibrant Life podcast. And today we have a special guest with us. We have Jeana Oldham, who is a woman on a mission. So, Jeana is the host of the Abundance Formula podcast, where she's interviewed entrepreneurs, professional athletes, multimillionaires, celebrities. And on top of that, she's also a speaker, a coach, a personal trainer, a practitioner, and she's helped thousands of people rewire their mind so that they can recognize and tap into their potential to live a fulfilling life of purpose. So welcome to the podcast, Jeana.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So for those of you who don't know Jeana, would you share a bit about yourself and your journey? What's led you to where you are today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I would say as far as the entrepreneurship world, as a kid, I always was kind of drawn to that kind of stuff. I was always like making up whether it was a fake business, but it was real to me, kind of thing, or real things. Like in fifth grade, me and two other guy friends started an actual like little business that was originally part of a class project, but was supposed to just be like within the school. You made some money and it went to the class, and we ended up like doing super well. We created like a stringed trio. I played the violin and someone played the piano and he played the hammered dulcimer. And we like went all around the community and outside the community playing and getting paid really well. And so that was always stuff I was really interested in. I laugh now that I'm doing a podcast because one of the things I kind of played with was when I was a little kid. I don't even know how I figured it out, but I took my old like tape recorder thing and I pretended to be like this radio DJ that interviewed people, and I didn't have other people I was interviewing. So it's like I was both the voices. And it's so funny like to think like how interesting. I always tell people when they're trying to figure out what their gifts are or what their callings might be, or to look back in your childhood, because there's so much evidence of these little breadcrumbs. Like it may not actually be that way, right? But it's still something that connects to in the future. So I was always interested in, entrepreneurship and that kind of stuff. I definitely loved athletics. That's the biggest thing I did growing up. So I was always involved in high level sports. I had considered going to college for basketball, but ended up turning that down because I was like, I don't really want to be a professional athlete. And so I went with a music scholarship. So I was blessed to be good at a lot of things, but then I had to like figure which thing to go with, right? So I think some people get either they don't feel like they're good at a lot of stuff and they got to figure out what to do with that, or they're good at quite a few things, but then you also want to really master something. So just long story short, through the experience I was in, I decided and had, been given the feedback I was really good at, coaching or pushing people to, do things they didn't think they could do. And so in the community I grew up in, medicine was considered a valuable, career to pursue. So I ended out kind of going that direction and was going to be a physical therapist. But before I went to physical therapy school, after I was doing all the shadowing hours, I really loved what it took to work with amputees, because that was kind of a next level, their stories and making them, tap into what's possible, or, stepping into what are your goals? What do you want to create for yourself? I loved the personal development work, which at the time I didn't realize that's what that was. But so I really wanted to just work more so with amputees. So I found out about this profession called orthotics and prosthetics. And it was pretty much just a specialization, kind of like a nurse practitioner, but it's a practitioner of orthotics and prosthetics. So that's your specialty. So I went to school for that, and I got my master's for that in California, and got to work with the Challenged Athletes Foundation out there in California, which I love. So that's where I got to tap into and work with a lot of Paralympic athletes who are all amazing. And so just from doing that work, I came back to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where I live, married my husband. We've got 2 little girls, finished residency, did all of that. And I love that work and I do that work, but then there still was more that I wanted to do. And I felt like there was some next level version of myself I was supposed to step into. And I was also still a personal trainer. I was a personal trainer through college. That's how I kind of made my money through college and stuff and grad school. And again, I love training. I love athletics, but there was still that like, what was the common thread that I really enjoyed? And I ended up figuring out not too long ago, kind of with the launch of my podcast back in 2018, that like what I really enjoyed was the personal development side of all these things. That was more the running thread through all of it, is digging into people's whys and what was actually holding them back and their blocks and that kind of stuff. And then seeing them go succeed once they had the right tools, especially mindset tools. So the podcast for me was my way to really step more into that area of profession, because I felt like that's where I was meant to really expand further into the world, not just my local community. And so the podcast I used as a bridge to create that. So it's called the Abundance Formula, because I knew from all the highly successful people I know and had been involved with that when you just listen to their stories, there's these common actions, thought patterns, and principles that create abundant living. And it's something that's repeatable and implementable, and it's for everyone, as opposed to a lot of us just feel like, oh, well, that really extraordinary success is for that person. I couldn't do that, but you can. And so that's why I started the podcast, to kind of bridge between the different audiences I had, from my athletic careers to my medical careers and patients and things, and draw everyone into the same space of let's help you create an abundant life, whatever that looks like for you. And especially those who want to live extraordinary, because that's something I always felt, that I was meant to live extraordinary. And I didn't feel like I knew a lot of people that wanted to do that. And so helping people tap into a network as well of people that want to live extraordinary and really create a ripple effect of impact. So kind of a long story short of how I've arrived at the work I do today, which is more the podcast. I'm still a practitioner, but just working part-time, being with my girls, building this other business of doing events with the podcast. The Abundance Formula event just happened in November. Speaking, I'm about to speak internationally in Belize in January. So that's kind of the world I've moved into now. And that's sort of how I've gotten there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love what you said about the childhood, going back to that and tapping into the essence of what it is that you love to do. Even if it's not the thing, it's like, what is it that you enjoy doing? Because that leaves a lot of clues, doesn't it? It's about where passions really lie. Now, you mentioned that there's a lot of common threads and themes with people that live an abundant life by most people's standards and achieve success in the kind of life that many people don't. Have you found that there are also common themes and threads that hold people back from creating that abundant life? And yes, what are they?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say number one is really self-doubt and what they believe is possible. And one of my good friends, Blake Leeper, who's one of the Paralympic amputees that I have worked with, and he's been on my podcast. One of the things he said that really kind of spelled this out beautifully was like, he has no legs below the knee, and he always wanted to be an athlete since he was a kid, right? So people are like looking at no legs, and he said, his biggest limitation was never his lack of legs. It was his biggest limitation was what other people assumed he could do. And luckily for him, he was strong-minded enough that as a kid, despite wanting these extraordinary physical goals, despite having legs, people would be like, maybe you should just take the elevator. And he'd be like, no, I'm going to take the stairs, right? So a lot of people don't have maybe that strong of a mindset, especially from childhood, to push through and not accept the limitations put on them by other people of what's possible. And I think that's what happens, is especially when we're children, we're free, up to a certain age in our imagination and our mindset, and what's possible. And you can really just dream. And somewhere in there, it starts to then shift to the external factors being like, well, that's not really realistic. But when we think about it, well, who gave them the authority to say it's not realistic? Who said you can't go be the next Taylor Swift, and we start to get this input of people around us that make us start asking the question of why us instead of why not us. And I think that's the biggest thing. The number one thing that holds people back is by the time we're really to the age of, especially if it's career-wise, doing what we feel called to do, we've now started to believe some of these past lies that aren't true about ourselves and who we actually are, or what we can truly achieve and are capable of conquering and doing. So I'd say that's number one, is this self-doubt and the limitations we've accepted that other people have kind of projected to us. And then I would say the second thing is people kind of accepting that, like, all right, I don't have the support system, which especially today, in today's world, we can't really use that as an excuse or a crutch anymore because of technology and stuff, because, so you very well may not have an environment or a community that's into that thing that you feel called to do, or people immediately around you, but you can go find that. So the people I've talked to, instead of being like, okay, maybe they were surrounded with poverty and not people who are financially abundant, but they went and found those people, even if it was through books, right? Even back in the day. So we didn't have Facebook and all the stuff. They went and read books written by people who found financial success, who wrote down in the book how to do it. So they went and found what they needed instead of accepting, I don't have it. They went and found it. They took action to go find it. So I think a lot of people hold on to that as well. I'm not supported. I don't have the information or the knowledge I need, instead of, so they focus on the problem, not what's the solution. Okay, I don't know how to do this. Well, how do I do it? I'm going to see if there's a book on it, or I'm going to get on Facebook now and ask a question and see if anybody knows someone who knows how to do it, and really getting proactive to find your solutions instead of just accept the problems. But I think that's an area where people let themselves be held back too. I'm trying to think of some other chief ones. Those are the first two that definitely pop into my head, is like that's accepting self-doubt and what your limiting beliefs of yourself are. And then two is lack of support system. I'd also say maybe the top three. So the last one would be thinking that it's going to come easily. I think that's one of my favorite things, is when people listen to the podcast, they see these really successful people and think somehow they had an in, or somehow they had something that we don't have, or someone else doesn't have. And it's so not true. Like one of the common threads is they had massive resistance around all the things they wanted to achieve, or they were totally not set up for success, or someone on the outside would never have thought they were going to be doing what they were doing. And so I think that's one of the things that holds people back, saying it's going to be easy, as opposed to follow that path of resistance. Like if you're getting pushback, it's probably a sign you're in the right place as opposed to in the wrong place. It's not, the no's that you get aren't stop signs, they're direction signs to the better place, the better thing. A lens shift is a big difference in what people choose to accept. Like, what lens do you want to look through when you face issues and problems and resistance? Abundant people see them as stepping stones, not stumbling blocks. And that's a big mindset shift that makes or breaks your ability to achieve abundance, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and you'll have to forgive me, I can't remember the name of the guy that was talking about it, but he'd said that the athlete who is number one, as an example, may have the most wins, but they've also had the most losses, and it's because they've gone out there and done it the most times. It doesn't happen by accident. Yet there is that kind of instant gratification, particularly when it comes to abundance, in quotation marks, that it should happen immediately. I'm sure you'd have heard of her, Amy Purdy.
Yes,
amputee, yeah. And there's a prime example of being told, you can't do the snowboarding and things that you used to do. And it was, no, how can I do this? And it doesn't exist, so I've got to go and create it, which is taking away those limitations. So I have a question for you, because you have all of these things going on. You're a wife, you've got children, big ambitions. And I know that some of the biggest excuses that I come across are, I don't have the time, there's too much to do, where do I even begin? So how do you balance everything that you're doing and still proactively work towards those goals and make stuff happen?
Mm-hmm. I would say the biggest thing is, like, you kind of have to, I wouldn't say everything is always in perfect balance. You definitely have to, I think self-awareness is the number one thing, is to say, like, okay, in this particular season of life, what is the most important things that I want to, grow. Try to keep the other things close to the same level, but you also have things that do take chief importance at different times. And so, right now we've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. Well, it's okay, so of course I could be probably way farther even in my career aspirations right now, but we wanted to have kids and not wait, longer. I think I was 30 when I had my first, and 32 when I had my second, or something like that, or somewhere in there, something like that. Quick math. But, so there's different, so you have to take a priority. So I'm okay, so family. So I know that I will be splitting my time being present with my kids, but then also still growing this career, not giving that up though. See, a lot of people just drop it, but for me, it was still one of my chief important things. So then I was okay, so family and my business are two very important things to me. So then you look at your layout, say, how do I make it, work? And so then you have to kind of plan. So, and your whys, that's really big, because you won't always be motivated. So having a strong why behind, why do I want to build a really successful business? And how does that tie into my family? So it's important for me to continue to do that, because it's showing my girls something important that I want them to learn and see. And so having a strong why, then you look at your calendar and you're like, okay, again, depending on the phase of life, like, so, when you've got little kids, they're going to sleep at different times of the day in different phases. So like, I've learned to say, okay, these are the things I really want to get done. Where can it plug in? And having a plan, an idea of a plan, at least, is really key, especially if you've got kids, because like if you just show up to see what happens in the day, you won't get a lot done. So it's like, if I know, like right now, the time just changed. My girls used to both kind of be up around 7 or so, maybe 8 if they slept in. Well, now that means that's 5:30 or 6. So I have to get up earlier then to get the work done I was going to get done, like business stuff wise, before they wake up. Because then I know the littlest one takes a nap around 11 or 10:30, and then I can get stuff like this done, right? So I kind of learn the sequence of where I'm at in the routine and start thinking of what activities I can do for my business in these different dormancy periods when my kids are maybe really relaxed and ready to watch a show for a while because we've already played. And so it takes a lot of strategy and thought. It doesn't, like, you won't get stuff done if you're not really thinking about it. That's one of the things I developed the skill set for when I was competing nationally and internationally in bodybuilding as a fitness competitor. Like, I was the fittest in the busiest time of my life, but it's because it was important to me. So I looked at my grad school schedule and was like, okay, so I could wake up at 4:30 and do, this workout before class starts at 8, still have my time to study, still got straight A's. Like, you just have to be very disciplined about the plan. I think a lot of people don't want to take the effort it takes to make a plan. And also get good at pivoting too. You have to pivot as well, especially when you've got kids. So, I mean, my biggest strong suit is like having strong whys so that I'm determined no matter the pivots I have to make to still check the things off the list, but then having a plan and just, seeing what season I'm in life and seeing where the things plug in. And that's really important. And I'd say one of the things I learned even just this year, I love Ed Mylett as a motivational speaker and business person, and his latest book that he came out with this year, that's called The Power of One More. And I loved, he said, framing goals as standards will make you follow through more, because standards are like a next level of priority for us. They're more tied to like our integrity and our character, as opposed to just on your to-do list to do, and so it's like, if you're going to be at a job, it's a standard, these certain job requirements you have of that position. You don't just maybe do it that day. It's a standard for working at the place you're at or whatever. So you get it done no matter how busy or crazy that work day looks. Like, you make your things happen. And it's because it taps into this next level of ourselves that feels more attached to who we are as opposed to just a wish. And so that was a really cool thing, especially as my life's gotten so much busier this year, having the event and, be traveling and speaking more and all this stuff, is so like, what's actually a standard of mine versus what's just kind of a busybody to-do list. It's kind of a great way to make it yourself work smarter, not harder, is you can make your to-do list, but then when you really put the dash beside to say, what's actually a standard for me to complete today or by the end of this week versus what's just kind of a goal. And so that's how I can really arrange the order of priority and follow through on the things as well. So it kind of up levels your why too, thinking of things as standards, not just goals or hopes.
Yeah, I love that. It's like taking it on as that identity level, isn't it? This is who I am. This is how I show up. And when you can adopt something as it's what I do, then the action kind of follows as it is what it is. Now, you mentioned before, you've mentioned about the why being really important. And you also mentioned about, when people come up against resistance and how that can be a sign that you're on the right track or leading you to the next point in your journey and the direction to go. What kind of practices do you follow or things do you do when you hit those points of resistance? Because I know there'll be people that are listening that are thinking, right, I know my why, maybe I need to strengthen it a bit and get in touch with that. Yet when they hit points of resistance, it's almost like falling at the first hurdle. So what kind of things do you do, or do you help the people that you work with to get through that, overcome it, pivot, and come out the other end?
Yeah, I'd say the real thing I try to help people harness is perspective shift. So when you hit resistance, again, seeing it as not a stop sign, but as, okay, is this particular thing an arrow sign? Like, okay, I'm going to turn a direction and know and choose the perspective of like, this is taking me to a better place. And to know that the resistance points are also create optimal timing. So there's a few things I feel like resistance creates. It either takes you a better direction than you could have actually imagined for yourself, or it's creating optimal timing. So again, creating a better outcome than you originally could have even known for yourself. And also seeing it as like, if it's a no right now or the resistance right now, it's resistance training for your character, for your skill sets, for, what's really to come, so you can actually handle it when it comes. A quote that I love from a pastor that I really like, that's named T.D. Jakes. He was saying, most people struggle in life because they don't have the patience to become who they actually want to be. That, success in life is a process. And if you don't go through the process to get it, you won't be able to keep it when you get it. And I think that's so huge and so true. So often the resistance is kind of one of those three things, like a lens that I choose to see is, okay, it's either pointing me in a better direction. Maybe I wanted this yes from this particular sponsor, but because I got a no from that sponsor, I went down further in the list to somebody I might not have if I got the yes. And now I got 5 yeses for sponsors, right? It's choosing that lens of, okay, it's pointing me in a better direction, or to the actual person I need for my breakthrough, or to the actual circumstance, or maybe just talking to that person, they were the no, but then they are talking to their business friends who they mentioned my name, and that was the person I needed, so seeing to choose the perspective like that no is still taking me somewhere valuable. And then the optimal timing, again, kind of goes with this resistance training of better preparing yourself for what you're actually praying for or hoping for. And to know that at the end of the day, when you get the breakthrough and you get the yes, because of all this resistance prior, you're better able to handle and capitalize on what you even wanted in the first place. And that's definitely a perspective shift, but it's what all abundant people have, is the perspective shift. And it also is evident by the outcomes they get of like, wow, this was what I originally wanted, and now I got tenfold what I even didn't even know to ask for, because I went through all this resistance along the way. And again, just to, the things that we hope for and want in life often come with responsibilities that we don't know that they come with. They're good, they're good in the sense of, you have something really great. Maybe you have this multi-million-dollar business, but if you literally went to bed one night, normal, and then woke up the next day and had a multi-million-dollar business, you would be so overwhelmed and wish you didn't have one, but if you do the process of the journey and all the failures and the mistakes and the learning lessons along that way, now you can handle a multi-billion-dollar business. And now that's a blessing. It can be a curse if you're not ready. So that's one of the things I tell people, is like the resistance along the way may really suck, but it's going to make the thing you actually want not a curse by the time you get there, and be an actual blessing to utilize as opposed to not, and makes it worth anything at all.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the questions that I'll often ask myself and my clients are, what are the consequences of getting the thing that you want, both good and bad? Because people don't necessarily play through, oh, actually, if I got that multi-million-pound business, what does that mean to my life? Mm-hmm. And if there's some negativity around that and beliefs that you won't be able to handle it, then that in and of itself is just going to repel it, and an unconscious level, you're going to push it away anyway. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I love the resistance training. I liken it a bit to if you were to wake up in the morning and suddenly have lots of muscles. So you've got the muscles, yet if somebody were then to handle you the weights to keep those muscles, you wouldn't be able to carry them. Mm-hmm. So you've got to get in the gym and build the muscles for yourself so that you can hold those weights.
Right.
So, okay then. So you have the Abundant Formula podcast. You speak with people who live an abundant life and help people to create that. So what does abundance mean to you? What's an abundant life for you?
For me, an abundant life would be one that you feel truly fulfilled in. It doesn't mean everything's perfect in all the areas, but it's one that you feel fulfilled in, and like you've truly laid it all on the table, like you've given your all for it, or and that you're also in the process of doing that, because that feels good. I think you don't feel happy when you know that you are stagnant somewhere, or that you're settling somewhere, and that that you feel drawn for more out of yourself somewhere, whether it's your relationships, your physical health, your career, your impact or whatever. So I think an abundant life to me means really feeling like I have meaning and am creating, and in the process of creating the kind of impact I want, and being able to feel that that peace and fulfillment in both the good times and the bad. Because I think that's where there's successful people and then there's abundant people, and so the people who I would consider abundant, not just successful, actually have a life semblance of peace and feeling settled even in the really tough times, and not fall apart in the tough times, because they have this perspective of, life, that this is all for me somehow, not happening to me. Even if they're going to go ahead, you still embrace the pain or the suffering, but seeing that as more a bridge to create empathy for other people. And so if I can change someone else's life for the better because I've gone through this, I'm not going to waste it, kind of thing. And so this mindset shift as well is a big difference in abundant living, as to that it's a whole journey. It's not a destination point, and that it's not under the power of our circumstances, that it's outside of that. And you can feel abundant and fulfilled and at peace in the good times and the bad is really important for me.
Mm-hmm. Love it. So if somebody out there was to be listening right now and they're not living an abundant life, in whatever their version of abundance is, what would be a good starting point for them? Where do you begin with your clients, or the people that you come across, to help them begin taking steps towards living an abundant life?
What I like to do with people is start with okay, what do you consider kind of the different areas of your life? Because there's different areas. We have our physical health, our mindset, our, I'd say, career / purpose / fulfillment. Like if you're a full-time mom, that's your, that's a job, and it's a service, a value point. Relationships or your connections with other people. So whatever that is to each person, those are kind of mine, but other people could have it different. Like what are sort of, you would consider the different categories of your life that are important to you, or you feel relevant. And then of these different areas, where do you feel like you're really struggling the most, and kind of order them. Like, where do you feel like you're struggling the most? Where are you lagging behind the most? What needs the most work? And then start really breaking down, okay, what is it that I'm not satisfied with in this particular area, and kind of figure out that. And then you can say, okay, so here's the things I want to improve. Why now do I want to improve these things? And establish that connection point. And then you can really start to say, okay, so which one do I want to tackle first? And kind of pick one that's the most important, because you can kind of work on all of them at the same time, but pick one that's the most important. So if you start to feel overwhelmed, you can know this is your one of chief importance. So if it's your physical health that you feel is the most off track, then, focus on that one. But so kind of laying it out again with this quote plan. So you have this self-awareness of what are you even trying to do? Because a lot of people just don't go anywhere because they just don't know where to start. And so here's the different areas of your life. Here's the ones that you feel like you could really improve on. Which one, it's the order of importance. And then I like to help people just think of your day-to-day, like what's when you're always going to come to a crossroads of a decision point all throughout your day in the different areas of your life. And so when you have this intention each day to say, okay, when I come to this crossroads, I'm going to think of it as, okay, what's the next best decision I can make of this situation to move me towards where I want to go? Like, and just thinking of them as one more next best step, not have to go all the way, So I tell people, even if it's food, you may not have all the healthy options in your house at the time, but if you come to breakfast, here's your decision for a crossroads. Okay, you've got the frozen cinnamon rolls you can pop in, or you've got some toast, right? So which would be the next best decision you can make to move you forwards? Okay, I'll choose the toast. So you just made that decision. You didn't think about the whole day yet, but just made that decision. Then you come to lunch, or you come to what, so just thinking too, just day by day, each decision one at a time, and then just make the next best decision. Maybe you had to go out to, or you had to get some kind of fast food for lunch, but you don't have to for dinner. You have some time. So you say, okay, well, I did fast food for lunch, but I'm going to do something from home for dinner. So it doesn't have to be all the things at once, just looking at one next decision at the time. And what I think that helps people do is with follow through, which then builds confidence in your ability to keep promises to yourself, which ultimately is how you create that abundance, is by following through on taking action. Like, you can have the layout, but you ultimately do have to do something. You have to create the follow through. But a lot of people will fall off track if there's too many layers to do at once, like especially with my physical fitness clients. Like if there are a lot of layers to that, and if doing them all at once, especially if you're way off course, it's going to be too much. So just pick a layer and stick to it for a couple of weeks and until it feels second nature to you, then add the next layer. You'll ultimately, even though it feels slow in the beginning, go so much farther because you learn to keep promises to yourself, and that builds confidence in your capacity to achieve things. It creates micro wins, and all of that really stacks over time. So I'll kind of help people with just thinking about just day-to-day decisions, making one next 1% better decision each day at each new crossroad in the different areas of your life, the different, you get to your different relationships in the day. Is this one that's helping me? If is me dwelling on this thing helping me? Okay, no, it's not. I'm going to decide to, move on or whatever. So people can think of that a little more in digestible parts than like, whoa, I've got to do all this stuff at once. So I try to just help people break it down to just making one more good decision each day, but being aware ahead of time that that's what you're going to do. Because otherwise you'll just make decisions, but know each day intentionally. Oprah once said, you don't have what you want, you have what you intend to have. And I think that's really huge.
Yeah, I think everything you're saying is great. It's kind of goes back to what you're saying earlier. When people have these big, massive goals, it can seem so unachievable. Whereas when you break it down to the little steps, which is what the really successful people did, is just one step at a time. And it is that commitment to knowing that it's not going to happen tomorrow necessarily. It might, but there's a journey involved, and that journey is the part of you becoming that person that has those things. Even down to, if you have a project to say, oh, I'm going to start a podcast, that's a thing, yet breaking it down to, right, what do I need to do? I need to create a cover photo. I need to decide on a name. And then it's when you do those little things, you get that momentum going, and you want to keep those promises to yourself because you've started it. So, yeah, fabulous. Right. So
another thing that made me think of, sorry, just real quick, is as far as to helping people again, like in confidence of what they can do is, this, what I like to call the be, do, have principle. So think of the kind of person that has the abundant life you want in the different areas that you're deciding to focus on. And what's cool is you can think, okay, what would that person be like? You can literally write down characteristics of who that person is in their relationships, in their physical health, in their, purpose and service or whatever. And so you can then embody those today and think like that, every decision now you come to, well, what would the future Jeana who has all these things, what would she do right now? She would clearly do this. It's a pretty much a no-brainer. You know what the higher level version of you would do, and you are capable of doing that now. And then you can have what they have. And that's kind of a cool, empowering formula for people to realize, like, if I decide to be the future version of myself now and live like them and make decisions like they would and plan like they would and whatever, if I'm being them and doing them, then why would I not have what they have or better? And that's kind of a simple version that they can think of too for how to just get there.
Yeah, I'm fully on board with that. It's something that I talk about as well, is becoming that person, even down to the, how do they show up every day? Are they tenacious? Are they enthusiastic? Do they go to bed early? And doing all of those things. And yeah, the have just happens rather than going for the have first, which is hard work if you haven't become the person.
Exactly.
Brilliant. So we've mentioned about books and podcasts and all those ways that people can access abundance that's out there already to be able to, whether it's follow somebody, read the formulas, copy what they do. So what books have you read that have had the biggest impact on your life?
Lots of them. The Power of One More, which is a recent one. That one's by Ed Mylett. One of my newest favorites is No Pain, No Gains by Chip Gaines. Such a great one. About really, it's kind of about how he's formed his network, but in a relational sense. It's really cool. I love, what is it? I've got The Power of One More stuck in my head, but it's a different kind of one more concept. I love the Millionaire Mindset is another really good book. Gosh, there's so many.
Those are great. Yeah, I'm making a note of those because I haven't.
Anything by John Maxwell is good.
Yes.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People is really good. Purpose-Driven Life. I like all those kind of very personal development books. There's another one that I'm blanking out on. That's a business book. I'll have to, if it hits me later, I can always message it to you too. But yeah, I've got books here. I should look at what some of the names are over here. They're all over here.
And
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. There's just so many good ones. Those are a great start.
With the people that you've spoken with, and yourself included, have you found that there's a difference between reading the books and implementing what's in the books? Because there can almost be like information overload now, because there's so much available. And I know many of the people that I've spoken to in the past that have maybe been struggling, they've got tons of information, yet they're not necessarily doing anything with it. Hearing the same messages over and over and over again and saying, but this stuff doesn't work, but not doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, totally. Yeah. People can be kings or queens of research, but until you try the stuff, and that's the thing too. I think people don't realize they'll read, say, these books, and there's all these methods and strategies and ways to think and ways to be, different personality types of all the different people. And so someone might try, even if they do sort of try something and maybe it doesn't work, a commonality of successful and abundant people is they keep trying things. So the person whose book you read may not be exactly how it's going to work for you. Parts of what they're saying and teaching might work for you when you implement it, but it might be a mix and match of all these different things. So especially if you have read a lot of things, start trying stuff, because now you'll find your exact formula. It won't be exactly the same, but you may mix and match and find what do you like to do? How do you like to be? What feels right to you? But you won't know that until just trying some of the stuff and seeing what happens and following the path. To create a reaction, you have to do an action, and
Mm-hmm.
so that way then you can see what happens after that. So I think people need to let go of thinking, well, once I try this, it needs to go right the first time. It totally won't. It's not going to, and know that. And the people writing these books that you're reading or the podcast you're listening to, they're not saying, that's what I like, is when people tell their stories, their backstories, they're not saying it goes right the first time. In fact, most of them are they totally don't go right most of the time, but then you've learned all those lessons, and then you get the really big wins, or you start to get a sequence. But people just try stuff, so you will have to try things. You will have to be willing to mess up, and not take that personally. I think a lot of people just take it personally. It's you don't have to, the faster you get up, that's a commonality of successful people try so many things, they just get up faster than other people, and they take things less personally, if they're critiqued or if they're whatever. And they just learn from it, and they just see it as learning and not this personal attack of, oh, somebody didn't like that product. Well, why didn't they like it? Or somebody told me no, they didn't want to buy the thing or support my thing. Well, also not just leave it at a no. A lot of the successful people ask why not. They're not trying to convince them to still say yes. They're just well, could you tell me why, just so I can learn and know your perspective? Okay, well, that thing, I feel like it's too expensive for the value you're saying you provide. Okay, good to know. You're doing your research along with whatever, as far as, say, business goes. So I think that, yeah, you just have to implement. You have to do, or you won't create anything. It's just the name of the game. So
yeah, absolutely. And if you can see it as a research project, so every action you take, it's I'm going to see, do I like this? Does it work? Get the feedback, and then I'll go try something different if that wasn't it, or I'll refine it, or whatever it might be. So then it takes that pressure off of, this isn't the thing. It's not, I'm on my X Factor audition and it's now or never. It's,
yes,
I'm just showing up and seeing what works and what doesn't. But fabulous. So I'm curious, because you've interviewed both men and women, do you see a difference between the two? You mentioned about, with balance, there are always going to be certain times of your life where different areas are more important to you, and it's the focus may be there, whilst keeping in awareness the other stuff, so that you can have a kind of a balance across life. Is it different for men and women, particularly when it comes to women having children? Are there any commonalities or themes that are beneficial for either side? Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I'd say the biggest thing I've picked up on so far is they all go through, the same action steps. If they're a successful entrepreneur, it's they have to put in the work. They're messing up. They're trying again. They're asking for help. So the ways people come about to get the results tend to actually loop around and be the same. I'd say that when I hear them talk about, say, their different mindset blocks or things like that they had to overcome to get where they are, those are different being men and women. I think we struggle with different things in general as far, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I've heard one of the fathers that I've had on, say they've dealt with father guilt, you know what I'm saying? Where it's like all the moms who are entrepreneurs deal with this mom guilt, because for the most part, even though it's changing today, more so, like, the moms typically are the ones that stay home or work less and do more with the kids. And even if they're like me, like very much doing equally both, the kids are just along for the ride, there's still, you can think, well, maybe I still should do less and spend just more kid focused time, or not make them come with me to gather all the stuff for my event and, whatever. And so, or come to this meeting. So I don't really hear the dads ever, even if they have to cart their kids along with what they're doing, they don't really think about it, that I've heard from people on my podcast, whereas moms definitely are all like, how do you, the mom guilt, that's what people want to know about or share about how they moved through mom guilt. I don't hear that much from the parents that are fathers. I'm trying to think of some of the, like, for the men more, it's a lot of the men have had to shift through, like, not external affirmation, but like, proving themselves a lot and stuff. And I think for the women, it's a little less about, like, that kind of perception. So I'd say their roadblocks tend to be different, but their way to get success is ultimately the same. And I think for the women in entrepreneurship specifically, they, do feel like they have to work a little harder in the career space, just because, again, women typically are the ones at home with their kids, as opposed to coming out here being some powerhouse leader perspective. So that's probably the most things I've seen. But really what's pretty cool is the people at that level abundantly kind of all end out landing in the same place, because, again, even the men there aren't viewing women that way. You know what I mean? Like, they're seeing women as equal, and the women at that level are also seeing themselves equal. And they're not, abundant people aren't even focused on that battle of, feminism or any of that. From the people I've had on my podcast, it's not even a concern of all those things. They're just on the mission. And so that's kind of cool to see, is like, at that level, all that stuff is too small for them, which is really cool. Who's home with the kids, or whose time is spent where, like, that's too small. It's too much of an energy drain for these people. They don't have time for those little pinholes in their cups, which is a cool crumb for people to pick up.
Yeah, great lesson there. So brilliant. Well, what I'd love to know is about what you have coming up. What exciting things are you working on at the moment?
So I just finished November 5, my first, like, abundance formula event. I had done a smaller workshop prior to that, right before COVID happened. And so I didn't end up doing, like, the next level version of it that I was planning to then. So I just did that, and it was so much fun. It was a lot of work. It was the first time I'd ever gotten, like, sponsors for an event and, like, a whole thing. And it went really well. And of course, people want it again next year. So I'm already going to be starting the planning for that. People requested in their surveys it was just a day event. And they want it to be longer, which was a cool thing. I was thinking more on the bit, they might be like, maybe a little shorter, or maybe, you always wonder, you hope they have such a good experience that they wouldn't wish it to be shorter or anything. But so, yeah, they want it to be a multiple day event. So I'll have to start looking into that, because, this year I decided to do the event. I think it was in, like, May or so, and it was going to be November. So it was kind of a faster turnaround than, once you decide you're doing an annual event, you definitely want to prepare farther out so that you have more time to gather sponsors and all that stuff and pick your space and all that. So I'll start that prep here soon. I'm still kind of, since coming off the event, just taking a relaxed point probably through the holidays, but that will be pretty quick to be planned. And the next thing I'm also prepping is in Belize. I'll be speaking in Belize for a women's retreat in January that goes from January 23 to 28. There's actually, like, 3 more spots if people want to come. It's called Building Influence in Belize. And so it's going to have a lot of personal development work, branding, online presence. And even for people who don't have a business, it's so important for them to realize, like, if you want to make an impact in the world, you really can extend that farther if you start to show up online in a powerful way. not for paid things, just for impact, for things you're passionate about, just bringing joy to people. So it'll be something for everyone, but especially if you are an entrepreneur or you want to be one, there's going to be so much help, auditing your social media and all kind of really cool stuff on this retreat, plus getting to go do some really fun activities. The host of that retreat is Whitney Weiser Savage. She's been on my podcast a couple times, and she has an incredible story. And so she's in charge of this event and is a powerhouse online and in person. So that's coming up. I'm really excited about that. Really just diving into continue to grow the podcast more. Before this year, I didn't really have the desire to monetize it. It was just a passion project, but now I just love it so much that I am excited to do that now. So just continuing to build the actual community, because the other thing, again, it was just sort of a passion project and it was doing really, really well. And I just wasn't doing anything with the fact it was doing really well besides just knowing it was creating impact. But now I'm excited to engage with the listeners more. So I have just recently, after this event, because so many people wanted it, I created a Facebook page called the Abundance Formula Community. So people can join that so I can actually interact with the listeners, because you can see your stats for your podcast, but you can't access the people, you know what I mean? That's where I wish there was a way to do that through, say, the podcast app. But so I've created now a community page for not only posting the podcast, but giving a bunch of freebies, doing giveaways, where people can vote on polls of what they want to hear, who they want to see, and people can feel like it's their podcast too. So I'm really excited about that community because it's free and it's somewhere we can actually connect on a next level, and people can get even more information they want from the podcast. So that's probably my next biggest thing, is just creating a next level connection with my podcast listeners. And working on that even more.
Yeah, I love it. So we'll put links in the show notes to everything that you've mentioned during the show. One last question before we finish off. Morning routines. There's a lot of talk about morning routines when it comes to success. Do you have one? Are you an advocate? Have you seen that it's something that people who are living an abundant life, is it something they do?
Yes. Yeah, I'd say every single person probably that's been on my podcast has a morning routine, however it looks, because it really just launches your day. You can either start your day in chaos, or even if your morning routine doesn't have to be long and do all of the things. And I think a lot of people think that the morning routine means you have to do, your workout and a self-care and a meditation and, all the, get it all in the morning routine. But that's really not the case.
Which could end up being quite stressful then when I've got to fit all this stuff in before we begin.
Yeah, it's another job. And so for me, what mine is that I'm just so much more efficient, and just the day feels like it starts out right no matter what comes in the day. Is, like I said, I try to get up before my kids. So, and especially when you're really busy, so in planning the event, I was always up at 5 a.m. because I knew they'd wake up by 7. So if I was going to have 2 hours so I woke up at 5, and the first thing I do is I'll make my coffee, because I love my coffee in the mornings, and I'll read my Bible. So I'll just do a little Bible study. It's not long. It's maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. That can be in the form of using a devotional as an initial prompt, and then following a verse that was in that and opening my actual Bible to read, or just flipping open my Bible. The Bible I have has devotionals in it. So I like to kind of read the title, just flip through and see what titles grab me, and then start there and just kind of go like that. I kind of phrase it like a law of attraction type thing, just what draws me in. So I'll do that first. And then after I finish that, then I'll dive into what business stuff I can do that's that early, so I've kind of got it in my mind. There's emails that I can send. There's, putting content up. There's, looking through and engaging on social media. There's different things that are on a list of stuff I can do that's that early in the morning. You can't make sales calls. You can't do, you can't do that stuff that early. So I have certain things on the business to-do list that I'll do then until my girls wake up. And even when my 4-year-old wakes up, she's good enough now. She kind of is a slow, when she can drink coffee, I'm sure she'll be like, don't talk to me until I've had my coffee, because she wants her chocolate milk and she wants to sit down quietly and watch a show. That's her thing, which I'm like, that's great. So when she wakes up first, she can sit, watch a show, and I can also get some more stuff done. But she knows I'm there to pay attention. I'll take my computer in there with her and be there if she wants me for anything. But then once the littlest one's up, then I put all that stuff away and just really focus on doing stuff with the kids. If it's a day that I'm not at my practitioner job, because again, I just work part-time there. So we can plan activities or that. So we'll do our play dates, or, we'll plan stuff to do. before the first nap of the day. And usually when my 1-year-old goes down for the nap is when I'll do my workout, because my 4-year-old likes to come and play in the gym when we do that. So we have a big gym at home. So that's just say the first like morning routine / important stuff that I know and have planned to get done every day at certain times that tends to be very consistent. And I know what days like I know what days that's not going to work to do the workout. You know what I mean? Or I know even ahead of time if something's going to throw something off. So my 4-year-old's not going to get her nap that day. And so, I look ahead and know that, but every morning, first thing for sure, I get my coffee and I read my Bible for 10 or 15 minutes. And then I do business work, and that gets my mind on track for the day, feel control of the day, feel like I'm tapped into looking for opportunity for the day. And I feel like I've also moved my business forward in the day, no matter what else happens the rest of the day, because there's other points in the day I can do business work, but I really have that hard focused time then, which is great.
Yeah. There's the book, The One Thing. I don't know if you read that one.
The One Thing, that's the one I was thinking of. I had the Power of One More was stuck in my head, but it was The One Thing. Yeah, I was like, I know it's a one type thing. That's the one. And it's such an impactful book. Yes, that is exactly what I was thinking of. I was like, I know I can't think of it with this other one in my head. Like, that is it. Yes.
Yeah, it's you saying about making sure that you've done that in the morning, then if nothing else happens, you've done that. So brilliant book. Highly recommend that one.
It's a great starting point, really, because again, it's just the one more concept of the one thing or the one more is really, I would recommend just the greatest springboard, because just conquer one piece at a time and you'll get through more pieces, honestly, just doing one piece at a time than looking at all the different pieces that you have on your list. So yes, that's the book. I'm glad you remembered.
Yeah, we knew we would be by the end. It's the domino effect, isn't it? When you just get the inertia of the domino. In fact, I've got it here. A trainer of mine spoke about the one thing and said about how to just start with the one thing, and he gave me this domino to remind me every day. So just look at it so that when you wake up first thing in the morning, it's a reminder of working on the one thing and the inertia that will create. So
that's cool. I love that.
Yeah. So amazing. So where can people find you, follow you, support you?
Awesome. Yeah. So I am mostly on Instagram, but now, especially since I started that community, I'm on Facebook now a lot. So Instagram, my personal page is Jeana, spelled JEANA _Oldham, OLDHAM. So that's my personal account. That one's the biggest account, but I just started after this event an abundance formula specific account. So it's called Abundance Formula Official on Instagram. So that's where a lot more of the personal development stuff will be. My personal page is a lot more like family, fitness, that kind of stuff. So if you want a little bit of both, that's where you can do both of those. And then I'm on Facebook at Jeana Oldham. And then the community page is really where you should go. It's the Abundance Formula Community, a Facebook group. And you'll get all of the things in that group as well, from, mindset, physical health, relationships, service, business, personal development. All that stuff's going to be there for any of those facets you want to learn from.
Amazing. And we'll put links to everything again in the show notes so people can find you easily. But thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love it. It was great. I can't wait to have you on mine as well.
Yeah, amazing. And have an amazing rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.